All right, here we are. Hey, everybody. This is Andy, your host of the Modern Military Podcast, and this is a slightly different podcast than previously experienced on this channel. This is a Beercast, boys and girls. This is a Beercast. What are we drinking? We're drinking PBR. We're drinking a 16-ounce tall boy of PBR. And I'll tell you why. It's been a crazy month. It's been a pretty crazy month. I moved out of my mom's basement, and that was, I was always one of those people who didn't think they owned a lot of stuff. Well, anybody can make that argument until you have to move it all to another place. So I moved out of my mom's basement, and that was good. That's seriously good. Step in the right direction towards, being an independent person. I actually moved into a friend's house, so I have roommates, but I mean, they leave me alone, and I pay them rent, and we're buddies. I see them when I see them, but let me use their kitchen and stuff. But it's just totally different ball game moving out of your mom's place. And why it's a beer cast is because I just gotta let the hair down here. Gotta let my hair down here on the podcast. Military history, it's a serious topic, something that deserves a lot of respect. But humor is something that I want to bring to my brand of practicing military history. I think it's a great way to get people to kind of let their guard down and listen to what you're saying, engage with you on a more human level. All that jargon and touch points aside, I don't think this channel can survive if I can't be myself every once in a while. So I thought, why not try a beer cast and drink a beer, talk with you guys about just a variety of things, hopefully that you'll find interesting. We're not gonna be editing this one. So we're already we're already going to hell here. Anyways, it's all right. Anyways, here we are doing the beer cast, and there's just a couple topics I guess I want to talk with you guys about. Just some ramblings. Get to learn a little bit more about me, a little bit more about what I like doing, who I am. As I said, gotta let my hair down, gotta be myself. And I've been meaning to put out some content for you guys. My problem as a content creator is I'm somebody who I'm fixated on like the big, beautiful, perfect project. And I'm always looking out for like that next amazing thing that's just going to totally blow everybody away, and it's going to be super cool. It's going to take forever to make, and weeks of networking, months of research, or years. God knows there's been some stuff I've been waiting to unleash and working on for years. But sometimes this level of perfectionism can get in the way. It can get in the way. So I thought, let's just do a podcast, make it a little bit more informal, talk about military history. This pandemic thing. I mean, listen to the scientists, wear a mask, do your thing, be safe, for God's sakes. But it's costing us a lot. My thing is my military history swap meets. That's pretty good. PBR, cold PBR is just like, it's good. You can get fancy beer, or you can just get a tall boy of PBR, throw it in the freezer for a little while, and you got yourself some podcast fuel. Anyways, my military swap meets have been canceled for like a year now. And if you don't know anything about me and how I like to do things, some of you may have seen in like the state of the channel for 2021. video. I'm just surrounded by military stuff. I'm just surrounded by artifacts, and I'm like, there's mannequins behind me and boots and pouches and all kinds of stuff. Grenades, who knows. I got a lot of military antiques. I love this stuff. It breaks the temporal divide between the past and the present. It's just like, what better way to just shatter this, very real, very human divide we all have with the past. Even, especially our own past, we can get divorced from our own, where we came from. And that can lead to problems in your own life. But, I mean, in terms of, like, other people, what other people lived, things that happened even before you, God, it's tough to get in touch with that stuff. So the job of the historian is to, like, find a way to present that to people in a way that it's meaningful, in a way that they can have some kind of emotional connection with it. So, I love artifacts because they just, nothing like holding something real in your hands that was there, that had done that, been there, done that. Because the people, unfortunately, the people are going really quick. World War II, a lot of those veterans have passed away. Now it seems like Korea and Vietnam veterans are really passing away. And anyways, in lieu of people and memories and all that stuff going on, sorry, there's a cop or something outside on the road. Artifacts, are one of the best ways you can get people to engage with things. And I found out at a relatively young age, going to gun shows with my dad, that you could just buy this stuff. You just buy it. It's out there. It's crazy. Like, you could buy a World War II ammo pouch for, $20, $10, $20, whatever. You could buy it. That's crazy. Especially when you're a little kid and playing Army in the backyard is like your nexus of being. So when I was a really young kid, I used to start just picking stuff up. I'd save up my allowance for the gun show, or I'd go to the hobby shop and buy books on World War II airplanes and things. Go to the bookstore and buy history books with cool pictures because I couldn't read the damn things. But artifacts were one of the concrete ways early on I found could really make that history real, especially to me as a little kid. And as I've grown older, I found that that's just becoming more and more cemented in my reality. It's something I can't get away from, and it's something I truly enjoy, is collecting, preserving, and sharing artifacts. And it's got me to know some weird people, I'll tell you that right now. It's a weird crowd. It's a weird crowd of people who are, like, into collecting military history gear. Not necessarily historians. They're not necessarily historians. I know a lot of guys who collect military gear who do not consider themselves historians. But they're people who are really passionate about this stuff for one reason or another, and they're keeping it around. They're keeping it out of the garbage heap. Really good friend of mine. He's a Korean War vet. He's my almost grandfather. Because my actual grandfather, who actually was a World War II vet, he passed away before I was born. But my almost grandfather is a Korean War vet. I was born into the house next door to him, and he stepped into that role and is still my almost grandfather. Wonderful man, absolutely wonderful man. He told me the epitomal story of why collectors are important to society. Military collectors are important to society. He said he and his kid brother had an uncle who had gone to Europe, fought the Nazis, and his uncle just brought back helmets and daggers and all this cool Nazi stuff, And it all just went into this chicken coop, and it stayed there. They'd play in it, play war, do whatever they want. They were kids. Two brothers with a whole bunch of Nazi artifacts. You can guess what that would look like on your Friday afternoon or whenever you get home from school. Yeah, I don't know if you get away with that now, but times were different then. Whatever. And one day, my almost grandfather, his mother had just thrown all that stuff in the trash. Threw all that stuff in the trash. It's all gone. Just gone. That's a sad story of what happens to a lot of military stuff. I mean, I just moved, man. I just moved. And there was a bunch of stuff that I had that, I mean, it wasn't worth nothing. I mean, I knew somebody somewhere on God's green earth would probably have bought it. But, you gotta chuck it. You gotta chuck it away or donate it or just get rid of it because you don't know where those people are who are going to buy it. You can't use it. You already have stuff coming out your ears and you need to make a decision. So a lot of people don't, if they know old military stuff in the chicken coop is worth something, then who's going to come get it? Is it really worth it? A lot of people are going to make the decision to just throw it away or sell it for cheap. But, collectors I've found are like this weird group of people who are like willing to take one for the team and just have this stuff take over their lives and just come out their ears. And, some people are better at managing it and containing it than others. Some guys just have military stuff that I know. Some guys just have military stuff everywhere in their house. They've like integrated it into their, just their every level of their house just has military stuff on display. Other guys have like built an extra house. I'm not kidding. They've built an extra structure on their property, insulated. It's like a proper house you can live in for the sole purpose of displaying their stuff. Some guys, they just have like a room, which is what I had in my mom's house. It's just like a room just where they put all their military stuff. I mean, and this isn't just military collectors, it's any collector. You get together or you get your stuff together, you put it somewhere. Usually not dictated, that's the wrong word. Has bad connotations. What I'm trying to say is if there's a woman who's willing to have you and you have a affinity for collecting old war shit, that woman will probably not want it everywhere. And that's probably sane. I mean, it's probably sane. And for the best. So what I'm saying is most sane women will kind of make men keep their military stuff away in the man cave, so to speak. And I know a couple people who that's exactly what's going on. It's surprising how much stuff can be kind of hidden away in a man cave, and the rest of the house is pristine, and you have no idea this person's a military collector. But thankfully, thank God for the wonderful partners and women who adopt a military collector and keep them sane and help them understand that military gear should not permeate every single part of the house. So I'm not bashing women at all. I'm just saying it's gonna go away somewhere. So guys have different ways of keeping it, whether or not it's dictated, whether or not it's heavily influenced, that's the term we're going with, by their significant other, or by their own common sense. However, if you're going to collect, just waste your money on, that's not total waste. I mean, it can be seen as an investment, but most guys, if you really get to the root of it psychologically, they're not doing this for an investment. It's because they like the stuff. It's fun for them. Guys have various ways of keeping it, displaying it, doing their thing. It's an odd group of people. And my swap meets were a big part of my life. Every month. Every month there is a local gun show, and it's not like most gun shows. It's really small. It's esoteric. It's just like old dudes, and one of these just really tolerant women who are allowing themselves to get dragged along to these things. Really cool group of guys, old guys getting together, just swapping stories and selling stuff. And, technically it's a gun show, but there's a sizable presence of guys who collect military gear there. So, I took one on the chin this year, and had to not see a lot of my friends, especially because they're old and vulnerable. Um, it makes sense that they can't go to these shows. I don't want to kill them by accidentally giving them a terrible virus, but had to take one on the chin this year and give that up. Means I haven't been collecting as much stuff this year. One of the reasons, or in last year, one of the reasons I wanted to really step up this podcast, this YouTube channel, and website, modernmilitaryhistory.com. If you haven't gone there already, go there today. Anyways, gotta put in my shtick somewhere. This isn't paid. This isn't advertised. It's just trying to get people to follow me and listen to me every now and then on ramblings such as this. Anyways, just I had to give up those military shows, and that was a big part of my life. Going and finding new little tidbits to add to the collection, and also just seeing these guys, these guys who'd become a part of my life. Collecting military history artifacts has given me an incredible amount, and I can't say it's really quantifiable in physical material items. I mean, you learn. I mean, I often joke that military history collecting and military history interests have taught me all kinds of things and have inspired all kinds of interests that you would never think stem from such a passion or such an idea. I'm really comfortable with people because I grew up, going to shows. I'm a little kid going to shows and wheeling and dealing and bartering with stinky old men. You get like you grow up and you figure out how to talk to people and work with people, and you figure out how to make an offer on something. You figure out how to sell stuff. You figure out how to make friends. You figure out that community is really important, and that honesty and integrity is everything, even if you think it's not going to come back to you, because it always will. You are your word. This is all incredible stuff that you learn. And I learned all this stuff pretty quick before the age of 16. And if I didn't by 16, you learn it pretty quick there afterwards. But people always told me I had an old soul. I was always kind of an old duffer trapped in a young guy's body. So anyways, I think a big part of that comes from my passion, my interests. So anyways, so one of the reasons I thought, the Beercast might be a good idea. It might be a good idea to, have a beer and just ramble for 45 minutes or an hour is, I'm missing that. I'm missing that interaction with people of like interests. How many of you out there are forced to give up something that really is meaningful for you in terms of personal interaction and, people that you care about, getting together, pursuing something fun, learning something, getting out of your damn house, jeez. Oh my God. Dude, we had a terrible ice storm. It was a snowstorm, kind of. Here in Oregon, on the West Coast, you don't really get snowstorms. Not where I am. What you get is, like, if it happens, maybe once every 3 years, you'll get a bunch of snow. And then right as it's looking pretty, it turns to rain on you. And then that rain freezes. And then it continues to snow, rain, snow and rain. Then just rain for like a week. So my power went out in my new place. I just had moved in. Just had started making content again. Just was starting to get back after it. And the power goes out. Power goes out. Oh my God. I'll tell you right now that I heard a historian stand up, a military historian stand up, and he was about to give a talk on a battle, and he says, the first thing you learn as a military historian is just how soft you are compared to these men that you're studying. these deeds that have been performed by these guys under incredible adverse conditions, acts of heroism, and courage in the face of a determined enemy and terrible weather conditions and everything and beyond. Here we are, pampered little soft idiots doing our best to comprehend what that must have been like. That's how I felt when my power went out. It's like, for me, it was like the Battle of the Bulge minus the Germans. I'm lighting candles up here, trying to keep warm. Jesus, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. It was actually kind of funny. It was actually pretty funny because I had just been working. I had just been coming off this massive. It was last weekend. I was just cranking out this research essay I've been working on for years. I mean, I mentioned earlier that there's some projects I've worked on for years. This particular research project is kind of what I was talking about. I mean, there's loads of stuff that I just have slowly chiseled away at, for a long time. But when I say working for years, I mean putting in hours every week, if not every day, pulling this thing out of the earth. I mean, it's this completely original research. I've never done anything like this before. This is the kind of thing I went to college to do. This is the kind of thing I read and revere. So I'm giving it my best shot. So last weekend, I'm hammering this thing out. 40 odd pages of just single space, 12-point font, Times New Roman. Finally print the damn thing out, and I say, I should probably take a break because I know how I work. You work really hard on something, and then you step away from it. You step away from it, and you get yourself some air, some room, and you come back to it fresh. Little did I know that the next day, my power would go out. For 6 days, my power would go out, and it'd just be... it's like my stupid, soft version of, Battle of the Bulge. I'm up here freezing and looking at the snow outside and the ice. And, I work from home right now. I do a work from home gig, through the computer. So I couldn't do any of that. And, work was cool. They understood. But it was like, God, what do I do with myself? It gets dark at 5 o'clock. Go to bed at 7 because there's just nothing to do. I feel like it was 1800s. But it gives you a really good appreciation for what it's like, for guys, not only just history, but, if you're in the combat zone, it puts you back in touch with the human elements of just all right, there really is no electricity. There's no human comforts right now other than just, again, I'm just coming at you from a civilian softy. Veterans are listening to this right now, just rolling their eyes. Listen to this idiot. Am idiot. Do confess. Anyways, it was just wild. So I ended up taking this unintended week-long sabbatical from everything. And I just said, you know what? Damn it. Once the power comes back, I'm doing it. I'm putting a podcast out, and I'm doing a Beercast. I'm celebrating the fact that I can do a podcast, and I'm going to do it in just kind of a fun, unique way. And it'll be something that people can listen to. And hopefully, just get a little bit of, let your head in, and have fun with it. So, I got some topics for you. Today is February the 19th. And, the thing about military history is there's so much of it. I mean, we're talking about, ever since there's been people, they've been killing each other over something and one thing or another. So it's really good being a military historian because you're never going to run out of anything to study or talk about. So I'm not going to say that I am anything special for doing this, but it's kind of fun. Today in military history. Today in military history. All right, so here is my new segment. Today in military history. the Battle of Iwo Jima started. 19th February, 1945. The Battle of Iwo Jima began, and I believe on the 19th, they first landed on the island. Yeah, the first day, the amphibious landing on the 19th. And, as people famously know, Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest and most incredible culminations of the Pacific War, as we were getting really close to the Japanese homeland. It wasn't, I wouldn't say, like, the Japanese fought more tenaciously there than they did anywhere else, but it is just well renowned that it is just one of the most incredible battles of all time. One of the worst, most apocalyptic situations that the U.S. Marine Corps has ever had to face happened beginning today in 1945. It's just kind of coincidence that this is today. I'm recording this podcast because I'm actually putting together a Iwo Jima Marine combat display. I love doing displays of what guys would have worn in combat, because I think that really tells the story of the physicality, the individual story of what it was like to actually be there and have to do that stuff. So I'm actually putting together a 1945, early 1945 Marine Corps infantryman's display, and I got a fair bit of it. But as I said, this last year of COVID has just totally hamstringed my ability to go out and find this stuff, and I don't really like to buy stuff over the internet. There was my time where I would buy stuff over the internet. There's only a very, very few vendors that I actually trust and actually would just kind of give my money to without any fear, partially because of their return policy, partially because I trust them through years of watching their business, seeing what they do, and having that repertoire built and observed by myself. But anyways, they obviously cost a premium, because not only are you just paying for that stuff, you're paying for that guarantee that comes with that stuff from that vendor. So unfortunately, I can't afford to just go online and just ching, buy everything I need. I can't do that. So how I put together my stuff is just years of knowing the right people, finding it randomly, keeping my eyes open in places that, for things that I know are real through years of research, and asking opinions of people who know, for the right price. It's happened more than once. One time I was at an automotive swap meet. I mean, it's just like a local racetrack, just filled with tents, and now in COVID times, I recoil thinking about this. We did this stuff like we thought we were untouchable. Little did we know. But anyways, just massive swap meet, just this massive international racetrack, just surrounded by guys in tents, just with rusty piles of car parts. And when there's old men bringing weird stuff to market, there will be military gear. You mark my words, there will be military gear in there. Being 7 years old and going to gun shows and finding military stuff up to the age that I'm almost 26, coming in March, you get a sixth sense for this stuff. And it's that sixth sense is just going haywire around these old guys and all their old car parts. I found a helmet. It's a World War II helmet. And found it at this car show. $35. It's $35. Great deal. Even for what it is, it cleaned up great. Then I noticed there was a name in it. Researched the name. Turns out it was a Pearl Harbor veteran. Now, this didn't mean a lot to me because I don't collect Pearl Harbor stuff. And I don't really collect Navy stuff. There are guys who do, and guys who could really give this thing a good home. In the end of the day, I didn't keep it. I sold it. $35 at the car show. it's like, I think I made $500 on this thing. I sold it over the internet, and to a guy, he was super happy with it. And I think, I don't know if he still has it, but sent this whole file on this Pearl Harbor veteran and this helmet. I don't think it was the helmet he wore at Pearl Harbor, but it was a helmet he owned during the Second World War. So it had really cool history, and it was a cool helmet to boot. And I used that money, and I bought a G43 with it. I found a G43 at one of these gun shows that I love to go to, in a sporterized stock for $600. It was like meant to be. It was meant to be. It was paid for by this helmet that I found. I made this money, and it was great, especially when you're like 17, 18, and spending $2,000 or $3,000 on a G43 any other way is like, it's like, hey, let's go to the moon. let's go to the moon for the weekend. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, well, expecting somebody who's 18 with $7 allowance a week is to spend $3,000 on a G43 is crazy. So it's crazy. You get on some of these forums that are just like super isolated, and it's just like the same 5 guys contributing, and they just like, it's just an echo chamber. And these guys are like, young people just started, they're not interested in this stuff anymore. These young millennials. It's like, you guys collect $40,000 Thompson submachine guns. If I get $40,000, I'm going to buy a house. I'm not an 80-year-old retired dentist, who can just, I guess I'll buy another Thompson. Anyways, you see this stuff, and it always kind of surprises me how little people can like think outside the box to think that, it takes a really long time for people to get to a point financially where they can spend a lot of money on super collectible stuff. The other way, the hard way, the way where you really need to know your stuff is going to gun shows and doing that assessment yourself. Like this G43 thing just worked out for me because I had read Darren W. Weaver's book, Hitler's Garand, on the G43 cover to cover more times than I know as a kid. I thought about the G43 so much when I was a kid. I built a 1-to-1 scale G43, and I wrote letters to this academic author who had written the world's leading gun history on this type of firearm, and had letter correspondence with him. Darren Weaver's a cool dude. He grew up not far from me, actually, and I didn't know that, but I wrote letters with him and have emailed with him since. But I compiled all this information into a little booklet I would bring to every gun show in case I found a G43, and it had all the slings and the magazines and everything, all the markings, all the variations, how to know it's real, how to know it's fake, all the variations of the rifle. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I put the work in. And then one day, it was meant to be. I had known what this helmet was. I knew that it was worth more than $35. I picked it up, I cleaned it up, put care into it, realized it might, it was worth researched it, figured it out, made the money on it, had that money in my pocket, went to a show, and there sitting on a table is a G43. And I had $700 in my pocket. I'd saved up all year because it was a big show. And plus that $500. And, there was. It had just been marked down from $900. You could see where the guy had crossed out $900 and written $600 on it. It was the last day of the show. I'd been working or something the first 2 days, and I couldn't go. And it was just meant to be that I could afford it. It was meant to be that nobody else had bought it. And it was meant to be that I was able to pull out this book. I shit you not, I pulled out this book that I had handwritten. I still have it. It's tucked away in my old copy of Hitler's Garands. And just confirmed, okay, AC-45, Walther of 1945 manufacturer. It needs to have this characteristic, and this characteristic. It needs to have this mix of phosphated and in the white parts. All right, let's take a look. It was in a sporterized stock. It was in its original stock that had been shaved down and leaded with terrible fake mother of pearl. You know what I'm talking about. If you collect old military firearms, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was Bubba. Bubba got a hold of it, and nobody at the show had what I had, which was, you know, an entire booklet to figure out that every piece of metal on this gun was correct and that it's essentially untouched except for the stock. So the G43 I have is just like an awesome deal that I got, and it just happened, serendipitously. So, oh Jesus, what were we talking about? What were we talking about here? We were talking about Iwo Jima. We were talking about Iwo Jima and this display I'm putting together. I don't know. I'm just fascinated. Back to Iwo Jima in like 1945 Pacific. I'm just fascinated with like the savage, terrible, apocalyptic nature of combat in the Pacific War. And I don't think there's anything beautiful, sexy, or nostalgic about it. I don't think there's anything about it that's like, I mean, you can kind of make the argument that at the beginning of the war, like Guadalcanal and Cape Gloucester and, in Bougainville and like Tarawa, it's like, ooh, these are some of the first times the Marines have engaged the Japanese, and it's kind of cool because everybody loves a good origin story, especially in history. You're gonna notice that like the origin story is like the only kind of history that's popular. How something began. Everybody wants to know about the first, second, or third of something. I mean, but by the time Iwo Jima happened, I mean, there wasn't anything really to be nostalgic about. It was another island. It was bloody awful. It was terrible. Okinawa even more so. I'm actually trying to make my marine display, Iwo Jima and Okinawa, kind of interchangeable. So, two different Marine Corps units, but they would have been mainly using the same stuff. So, anyways, I have access to some really cool artifacts that I may or may not bring to the channel. I'm not sure. I know the owner of one really powerful artifact from Iwo Jima that could be a whole 2-year research essay in itself, is like totally cool with me sharing it and putting it on the podcast or putting it on my website. If you haven't checked out my website, you just gotta go, because if you're gonna listen to me ramble for 45 minutes, how long has this goddamn thing been? If you're gonna listen to me ramble for 38 minutes drinking a beer, I mean, for God's sakes, you can go on my website and actually read this stuff that I spend, a really long time editing and putting together and sourcing material for. There's not like a lot of stuff on the website yet. I say yet because I continue to post stuff to it. But what's on there is really quality. There's always photographs of cool stuff. A lot of it I do myself as much as possible. I put the little like watermark in the corner that says MMH, so you know it's me. I put a lot of effort into this, and if you want to read, oh boy, there's the trigger term, read. Nobody reads anymore. We just listen to podcasts. Well, if you want to read, most of my podcasts are trying to get you guys to read books anyways. So if you don't read, this might not be the best profession for you or the best interest. Military history is by the most part literary, and that's one of the things actually I'm trying to combat in terms of modernizing military history. Modernizing military history is bringing it to people through varied formats, one of which being podcasting, another which being beercasting. Even more which is I still want to engage in classical academic writing. So I highly encourage you to go take a look at that stuff, because it takes a lot more time, a lot more effort, and than doing this kind of thing. And as I said, life's just been wild between losing power and moving, doing this crazy research project that is just years in the making, and it's not something that's like I can put out for you guys now. It's actually something that's going to be published, and unfortunately academia and writing history is super competitive, and there's no reason for anybody to know what this thing is before it gets out there, because I don't feel like getting it snaked, and God knows that's been known to happen. So not that I'm saying anybody gives a shit what some idiot 25, almost 26-year-old sitting on the west coast of America is doing. But I'm not in my mom's basement anymore. I moved up in the world. I'm literally in somebody's attic. Anyways, so we talked about Iwo Jima. That's what happened today. Today in history. All right. Next thing I want to talk to you guys about is Wheraboos. If you guys know what Wheraboos are, I'm sorry. If you don't know what Wheraboos are, I'm sorry. Wheraboos are not old. They're not a new phenomenon. Wheraboos have been around, well, since 1933, but we can make that argument. We can make that argument later. We can burn that bridge when we come to it, some may say. And a Wheraboo is somebody who, well, yeah, I mean, we've all come into contact with them, haven't we? If we're into military history, especially those of us who are, well, I mean, it's hard to be into military history in the 21st century without knowing a thing or two about the Second World War, which has seemingly acted like a black hole, kind of sucking everybody's attention to it and, devouring everybody, but in all interests and all book deals. But anyways, a Wheraboo is somebody who firmly believes in Nazi exceptionalism. The esteemed, academic, and dignified UrbanDictionary.com defines the Wheraboo as Wheraboo, a history or alternate history fan who is firmly entrenched in the belief that Nazi Germany's Wehrmacht was the best military in history, without a single flaw. Effectively, a Wheraboo is any obsessive Wehrmacht fanboy/fangirl who doesn't like historical facts getting in the way of his militaristic fantasies. While not necessarily, many Wheraboos can become Nazi apologists. The cliché of German Techwank can be a common fetish for many Wheraboos. Based on a similar sounding term, weeaboo, i.e. a catch-all definition for Japanophiles. So, I wanted to talk to you guys about Wheraboos because I think it has broader historical connotations that I think are really important to consider. And it's what they're called these days. Wheraboo is what they're called. I think it's funny. I think it's funny to refer to these idiots as Wheraboos. It's just somebody who doesn't read at all. And if you don't read, then you haven't done anything to seek out like actual information. You've played a lot of World of Tanks if you're a Wheraboo. I'm not saying all people who play World of Tanks or a lot of World of Tanks are Wheraboos. I'm just saying a lot of Wheraboos have played an inordinate amount of World of Tanks or some kind of video game, because video games are based in fantasy, not reality. Just like the historical world of a Wheraboo. Wheraboos are the kind of people who are going to adamantly state that, if Hitler hadn't just, if the Nazis hadn't just done this, they would have won. And, they weren't, if they hadn't just gotten on that, sticky subject of the whole Jewish thing, they might have actually been good people. It's like this kind of stuff. And this idea that they can be Nazi apologists is very rooted in fact. But, that's also rooted in the more you move away from a concrete, objective stance on history, the more likely you're going to become susceptible to ideological persuasion, if not just like ideological possession. I mean, the Nazis, if you want to talk about truly terrifying cult history, we're talking about Nazis. You should watch, if you haven't, listener, if you haven't watched shit like Triumph of the Will, man, it's freaky. You see entire cities of people, like these old propaganda films from the Nazi era. You see entire cities of people, waving and cheering, and they're holding their little beer steins and shit, and they're waving their red, white and black swastikas banners everywhere. It's not just a political movement. It's a social, ideological cult. It's terrifying. And if you can imagine living for just a second, if you can just imagine what it would be like to be in that kind of situation on any level, because when you read about history, you can't be reading about someone else. I mean, you can read as though you're somebody, it's somebody else. But the best way to read history and the best way to write history is to put the reader, to put yourself as the reader in the shoes of the people who lived in those times. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. This is a society that measured people's noses to determine whether or not, you were of racial purity. This is a society that, as all fascist or totalitarian states inevitably are, they're reigns of terror. It's terrible. First they came for the, what's that quote? First they came for the socialists. Martin Niemöller. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there is no one left to speak for me. Holy shit. What a dark, terrible, oppressive dictatorship that this beautiful quote from Niemöller, describes. And to say that Nazi Germany was anything other than that is to absolutely refute truth. It's an absolute refutation of the facts. And unfortunately, these days, Wheraboos have arisen, unfortunately, from a divorcing of historical education from the facts. I don't know why. I can't speak to it why. But I can say that there's a lot of people that I speak with who take up and read their stuff online, who take up these fantasy positions on history they don't understand, and any kind of research, any kind of effort, or the knowledge to be able to conduct that research, the resources to be able to mentally, critically think about what they're saying, are not available to them. I say that, World of Tanks is, and that's kind of joking, but I mean, holy shit, if you want to see some Wherabooism, go on like Reddit, and go on like the military tank like subreddits. These guys are crazy. They will just adamantly defend and just talk legions of shit about which tank was the best tank of World War II. And these are guys sitting in their chairs in their mom's basements. I can say that now because I moved out. Playing like World of Tanks where like gasoline isn't an issue. Air power isn't an issue. Ammunition shortages are not an issue. Sabotage from the slave labor that built the tank you're cruising around in, getting kills, for your fucking one-shot montage. That's not an issue. It's not history. I mean, there's things like World of Tanks. World of Tanks is cool because they sponsor awesome content on YouTube. I've known for a while that World of Tanks goes above and beyond to sponsor cool, true history. So it's not World of Tanks' fault. It's just people think that this is like somehow historically prevalent. Or no, somehow this is like historically accurate, or this is like a way at which to properly view history is through a very, and I'm not just talking about World of Tanks, I'm talking about people get one very like horse blinders. They have these blinders on, and they can only see just straight ahead, and they're looking at things in a very narrow fashion. They are not looking at things objectively. They're not challenging their own views. They're getting stuck in ideologies on chat forums, online, and they're saying shit like, oh yeah, the Germans were so technologically advanced, their military was the best military in the world, and if it just wasn't for this or it wasn't for that, they made mistakes, they're just, their uniforms are so pretty. Dudes, I've spoken with guys who are like super into collecting Nazi stuff. We began the podcast talking about what military history collecting means to me. I think that collecting Nazi stuff is valid. I think that it's a part of history that needs to be preserved, if not for the Niemöller quote alone, to be able to feel and touch and interact with things that came directly from this absolutely just horrific chapter of German history that infected the entire world and still does. You want to talk about neo-Nazi movements in 21st century, you don't have to look far, friends, to see the influence on politics anywhere in the world, especially here in the West. But I think collecting Nazi stuff's valid as long as you do it with the proper frame of mind that this is not pretty, cute, attractive, cool trinkets. These are solemn, horrifying vestiges of a world on fire. I had a Jewish history professor who I really, to this day, consider one of the best professors I've ever had the pleasure to study under. My grandfather, the one passed away I mentioned earlier, I have an almost grandfather. Well, my actual grandfather fought in the 1st Infantry Division during the Second World War. He's Purple Heart combat infantryman. He brought back some very small Nazi pins and things, and for a long time this is like the only Nazi stuff that I had, because I don't go and seek it out. One, because it's super cost prohibitive, and we can talk about that in a minute, why, but two, it's just never really been my thing. It's never been what's spoken to me. I'm an American kid. I'm really attracted to what it was like for people my age who were like me back in the 1940s during the war. So American and World War II is, for the most part, really what I'm interested in. That being said, that has allowed me a window to view the human experience of the war, and that is encapsulating across time to all wars and to all nationalities, all people, and that's been an incredible ride. But anyways, for a variety of reasons, I've never had a lot of Nazi stuff. Anyways, what I'm saying is this professor I had was just he spoke like 7 languages, including 3 dead languages. He would be this kind of guy where he'd have up on the projector like an ancient Hebrew quote, and it would be the ancient Hebrew above it, and then underneath would be the translated in English, and this professor was so cool. He would just be like, oh yeah, that, or it wouldn't even be, it would be like Aramaic, something far out, not just Hebrew. Hebrew, Hebrew's kid stuff. This guy's speaking like Aramaic. I shit you not, this guy could speak Aramaic. And he'd just be like, oh yeah, this passage is pretty good. This translation's pretty good. But, I'd translate this word that way. And I'd translate this word this way. And if you look at it this way, and then he'd do an entire lesson on, the verbiage of ancient Aramaic stuff. And he could read it. This guy was incredible. Incredible. He had tiny kids at home. And he was still writing books to publish. This guy's a hero to me. And he whipped my ass into shape, I'll tell you that right now. He was serious. This was a serious Jewish dude. He was like, you do not come to my class late, because I used to come to class late. And we don't have to get into why, but another podcast, another Beercast, folks. But he was a good guy. He was a good guy, and he's one of my heroes. He wanted to see this Nazi stuff, but he wouldn't touch it. He wouldn't touch it. I'll never forget that. I I brought these pins. I brought these pins in little things that my grandfather had stuck in a pocket and brought home, and I showed them to him at the end of class one day. And he looked at them, and he was, interested. He was like, well, I know, Andrew, that you're really interested in military history, and I really appreciate you bringing these by to show these to me, And he's like, oh, cool, here. And I don't know why, for me, holding and touching an artifact is like, it makes it real for me. It makes it real. And I just naturally started to hand him this stuff, and he backed away and he held his hands up. Nope, I'm not going to touch this stuff. Bad juju. He didn't say that. Bad juju from a juju. Anyways, joking. What I'm saying is that this guy had a reverence for these artifacts in a way that I didn't even have. And he shattered this barrier for me when I look back on that, of what this stuff means. And, in a way, I extend that not just to Nazi Germany stuff, with the swastika on it, and the eagle, whatever. Anything. Firearms, canteens, letters. It all speaks of a pain. It speaks of a great pain that we know not. Us, soft creatures of peacetime. So, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying, if you're going to collect Nazi stuff, and I mean to a greater extent, but especially Nazi stuff, I feel like, because it's just so unmistakably evil. If you're going to collect military history, I'll do that. I'll parse it out there. If you're going to collect military historical items, you have to have a certain amount of reverence for them and a respect for the story beyond the fact that you just own a cool toy. There are a lot of there are a lot of collectors I know who are not military historians in the fashion, in the manner in which I speak here. They have toys, and they'll have you over, and you can check it out, and it's a play date. And you're looking at their stuff, and, oh, this is cool, and this goes bang, and, oh, yeah, blah, 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 this makes noise, It's just, then there's some guys that collect this stuff, and they say, this is incredibly meaningful to me because of X, Y, and Z, and this is what this means, and you can just tell which guys think deeply about this stuff and which don't. And I mean, I get it. If you're a collector and it's hard to sit with the reality of what this stuff is, because I mean, my Jewish history professor knew. He was more grounded with it than I was. And I mean, maybe still am. I mean, I have a pretty small apartment right now. It's mostly like books and just stuff to keep me alive, like food and my bed. But I had to put my entire collection away, and I spent a long time carefully packaging it, and following museum guidelines on how to store it, because it's so important for me to preserve this stuff. This story is more than me. The story, the meaning behind this stuff is something. The true importance of these artifacts is that they will be here when I am gone. These podcasts, these writings, this stuff I am doing will be here after I am gone. After my vessel of flesh no longer walks this earth, or no longer can remember, anything. This stuff will be here. And that's my contribution, hopefully, because this history means so much to me. So I have a relatively high bar, influenced by some of the most incredible people this pursuit of historical knowledge have brought me in contact with. But Wheraboos are like the other direction. It's people who take history for granted, people within the paradigm of Nazi exceptionalism, which is not true. I always go against fucking Wheraboos on Reddit. I'll tell you right now, tilting against the windmill of Reddit Wherabooism is something I engaged in more frequently than I do now. I'm begrudgingly telling you this, but, you know, or YouTube comments, even though YouTube kind of changed their comment section a couple years ago, and it's not as spicy as it used to be. Excuse me. You know, people who just don't get it. It's like, oh yeah, you know, like the MP44 was a really cool firearm, but the history behind it is so much more interesting to me than just the fact that it looks cool and that it, you know, it goes bang and, you know, MP44 go burr. You know, there's a lot more to it than that. And, you know, the Nazis were exceptionalists for creating the rocket engine and, you know, creating the Panther tank and the fucking King Tiger. They didn't even have gas for the Panther and the King Tiger. And when you you know, when you really want to talk about exceptionalism in wartime, when you read the history, you understand that a massive King Tiger is nothing compared to a flight of P-47 Jabos flying overhead, because they have supreme air superiority, because the battle of logistics has been won. The battle of logistics was won long before the battle on the ground was ever won in any war. And if you really want to learn how to win a war, it's not by building, you know, big, fancy, flashy things. But of course, that's what people see. People are like magpies. The less educated you are, the more you gravitate towards shiny things without thinking about it, and the more likely you are to be ensnared by them. You know, and I talked about why one of the reasons I don't have Nazi stuff is because it's so expensive. This isn't old. I said Wheraboos aren't old. You know, back in the 60s, back in the 1960s, Nazi stuff was expensive. Like my friend who, my almost grandfather, who had the shed, the barn, or the hen house, chicken coop full of, you know, Nazi stuff in the 50s. Well, this would have been before the 50s, you know, early 50s, late 40s, before, of course, he went away to Korea when he was a kid growing up. All this stuff, it was really prevalent because so much of it came back as war trophies, but you gotta hand it to them. You gotta hand it to those Nazi sons of bitches. They knew how to make stuff look good. I mean, I'm not a Wheraboo, okay? I'm not a Wheraboo. I'm just telling you. It's cool looking stuff. Lugers look cool. FG-42s look cool. There's a futuristic, stylized aspect to Nazi occultism in all forms, both war material, social propaganda, and everything in between, because the Nazi state was omnipresent on all stages of life. That was really cool. It was a cult. And it ensnared people, and it still ensnares people. So you don't want to, if you don't want to get ensnared by a cult, you don't want to get ensnared by an ideology, go read. You feel funny about something, go research it. Learn, study, arm yourself with the knowledge to be able to make critical decisions about who you are, where you stand, and what you're going to do as a person. Wheraboos, unfortunately, are a symptom of the times, in that this history, this cataclysmic chain of events that led to the largest war in human history, the emergence of nuclear proliferation, the threat of world annihilation, the death of millions, not only combatant millions, but millions of just people, you know, just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. People like you and me came about because, you know, ideologies ensnare. So, I mean, you can go read about it right now about the creator, about MMH, modern military history, why I do this, why I think military history is so impressive, or why it's so important. I think it's so important because we can't afford to let this happen again. Not just World War II, but armed conflict in general. We need to arm ourselves with understanding the true nature of war. We can't let ourselves become victim to ideological persuasion where, propaganda makes our decisions for us, and we don't know how to research, critically think, and learn enough about our history to avoid those cataclysmic failures of society. So that's my situation. That's my speech. That's my spiel. That is my beer. And this was a Beercast. Holy shit, we're over an hour. Well, there you go. We're over an hour here. I better let you go. It's kind of late here. I have all this stuff I need to clean up. As I said, I've been living like a nomadic caveman in this apartment for the past week. So I need to clean up. I need to do stuff, and I need to keep getting after it. Today's Friday, the 19th, first day of Iwo Jima in 1945. But today it's the first day of my weekend, and as I promised, there is stuff that I want to bring to you. There's content out here that has just been cooking for a long time. I have videos that I have been just moving onto my computer to edit together and put together. So there's a backlog of stuff I need to do. And, excuses aren't everything. I think I just need to work better. I need to be better at time management. I need to be better. And I'm going to take responsibility here for getting you guys the kind of content that I think is not only going to enrich your lives, it'll enrich my life as well, and hopefully make the world a better place by honoring the people who have been there and done that, with never forgetting this history, and also, as I said, making this world a better place as we all understand who we are as a society moving forwards. So that is the Modern Military History Beercast. I am Andy, the creator, owner, producer, everything for Modern Military History. Considering putting out a Patreon or something, if people want to contribute to this. God, I don't know if I want to do it, because everybody wants your money now. Hey, make sure you like and subscribe. Here's my Patreon. Give me your money. Shit. It'd be nice to get paid to do this kind of thing. I have a nice job. I'm doing okay. I don't need your money. It's up to you guys. Would you want to be patrons of Modern Military History? Is this worth $1 a month or whatever you guys would put out there? Let me know. If you guys think that I'm full of shit and I'm not worth any of your money, that's fine. I will keep doing this stuff for free and whatever. I'm a terrible damn salesman. But if there was a budget for this show, the quality of content would definitely increase, and I'd be really transparent about how I spent the money and how much money I got and what I would do with it. So no sneaking off to buy whores and drugs with your hard-earned cash. If this became a thing, it would be like camera equipment, audio equipment, editing software, stuff that would just make this a bit easier for me and hopefully better for you guys. If it's something that you'd be interested in, let me know. Just put a comment down here. Send me an email. themodernmilitaryhistory@gmail.com. It's on the website, modernmilitaryhistory.com. If you're not following me on Instagram, god damn it, you better, because the website I'm using, talk about need for budget. I bought a domain, people, and I paid to run a website to put free content out for you guys. So maybe a Patreon. It does have costs. So shit, maybe I should do a Patreon. Anyways, this website, since it's kind of cheap, throttles my image resolution. So I thought, well, fuck it. Let's put this stuff on an Instagram account, all my own photography that I spend a shitload of time doing, making sure the lighting is correct. Pisses me off with my website. homepage blog thing throttles the resolution. So I put it on my Instagram. Follow my Instagram. It's not just that. I also put on, just every now and then, I put on some cool little military history tidbit that's just only accessible through Instagram viewers. So, and my Instagram is at modmilhist. All of this is available through the website, modernmilitaryhistory.com. I am Andy, and this is Beercast, signing off. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys take care. Stay warm out there if you're from Texas.